Is Warhammer the Old World coming out in 2023 or 2024? That's the question we're going to be asking today. Now, this video is actually prompted by Valric's rumour video, but I have to say I've actually heard some of these rumours myself, but I didn't really have a reason to talk about them. But now that Valric's done it, I thought, well, let's talk about it. There's one little extra detail that I think I have that either he doesn't have or he just didn't share. So one of Valric's rumours is that the game isn't actually coming until 2024. Now, that's going to be painful for a lot of you guys specifically, because obviously we're very excited and we're very eager for the game. Obviously, if that is true, with rumours, you never know what's true and what's not, right? Until you actually get it announced by Games Workshop, you just don't know. And even then, Games Workshop might move something either internally, or sometimes they possibly could move it externally once they've announced something. They don't really often do that though, I guess. Anyway, the theory is Games Workshop wanted the Old World to come out on Fantasy's 40th anniversary, which is in 2023, this year. And the theory goes that because of COVID, that it was obviously delayed. Now, they may delay it till late 2023. I do think that that is actually a possibility, or it could be delayed till 2024. It was announced that it was coming back in late 2019, and that was basically just over 3 years ago. By the time late summer comes around, it will be nearly 4 years since it was announced. Now, they did tell us that it would take a long time. I think they said like 3 years, maybe more. So 4 definitely fits into that category, right? And that's a relatively long time. Maybe not long enough for GW to bring back a whole game system, but it's a relatively long time. If the rumour is true that it will come out in 2024, that's going to be nearly 5 years. And personally, I can't see it being any further away than that. Like 5 years, I think is probably the right amount. If not too long, but obviously it was hampered by COVID. Now, on a personal note, I actually wouldn't mind the game being 2024. I have quite a few things going on this year, and I'm currently working on 2 armies that I'd ideally like to get finished, and I'm not very quick at hobbying. And don't worry, once I've actually done the hobby, or whilst I'm doing the hobby, I will share that on the YouTubes as well, and on my new Patreon, which you should definitely subscribe to if you want to support the channel. So for me, personally, it would be a little bit bittersweet. This year is very busy, so I wouldn't mind a little bit of a delay. However, for most people, that's not going to be news they want to hear. As I said, the reality is we don't know until Games Workshop tell us. We know we're going to get updates this year because Games Workshop have told us we're going to get updates in 2023. But we've been getting updates since it was revealed, and it might just be the same kind of stuff that we're getting, the same old world. Now let's move on to the other rumours that, as I said, come from Valric, but I have actually heard these independently. Now, we may have the same source, so it may just be one source, or it may be independent sources. Obviously, there's no way I can possibly know that without asking my source who they've told, and I don't really want to do that. The less information I know about them, the better. Then nobody can find me or them. Well, they can find me, I'm on YouTube. But Valric mentioned that there were 4 armies being tested, those being Bretonnians, Dwarfs, Tomb Kings, and Vampire Counts. And really, I don't think that information necessarily tells us all that much. I'm hoping they're going to test all of the armies and they're just going to do them in maybe batches of 4. So for me, that's nice to know, but not really that useful in a way. One thing that I've heard that Valric just didn't share, or maybe he just doesn't know, is that the rulebook is apparently being written by Jonathan Taylor York. And I believe that they wrote Blood Bowl, or the updated Blood Bowl rules. Now, one thing that I'm sort of gathering from what I'm being told is that the game doesn't sound like it's being streamlined. If anything, I'm hearing that some of the rules might be a little bit bloated at the moment. Now, I mean, if that is true, for me that would actually be the saddest news of all. Not really bothered about the release date, but I want the game to actually be good. And I think the game probably needs a little bit of dumbing down. I know that phrase is actually generally frowned upon, but I think it needs simplifying in some ways. But we'll not talk about why I think that in this video, just something that I've heard. And the next thing is the starter set. Now, Valric is saying that he's heard it's going to be Bretonnians versus Tomb Kings, and I have a big doubt over that one. For me, that matchup doesn't really make sense. Now, I will say that I haven't heard this rumour, so I'm not, even if I have an independent source, I can't verify this one, even though I'm not actually saying the source is independent, because it might be the same one. But I didn't hear this personally. Now, sure, I actually really like the sound of Bretonnians versus Tomb Kings. Really flavourful armies, and I actually really like them. Probably more interested in the Bretonnians and Tomb Kings myself, but you know, I would be very happy to see that. However, for me, it doesn't really fit with what Games Workshop's putting out. Yes, they put out some artwork that was Bretonnians, Tomb Kings, and an Orc, but I didn't really get the vibe that that's where they were really focusing. To me, that sort of felt like they were maybe bringing back the old kits, and that was a hint of that, rather than, hey, this is going to be the starter box. I also don't think it goes along with the Warhammer Total War game. It sort of felt like the main factions would be humans, so Bretonnians I actually think would make sense, but then I thought it would maybe be like Kislev or something like that, maybe Empire. Kislev versus somebody's who I thought was the main likely option, right? I think at this point, nobody truly knows what the starter box will be. It could be that this rumor is true, and hopefully it is, because I actually really like the sound of it, but it might just be maybe people are getting a little bit confused with the armies that are being playtested, possibly. Who really knows? We just don't know. Tomb Kings would be especially interesting considering that they were neglected in the past, to the extent that they were pretty much effectively almost phased out, right? Bretonnians, I think, would make a lot of sense. We've seen a lot of heraldry on the maps and that kind of thing. Humans makes perfect sense. I sort of felt like when they launched the idea for the game that it was going to be a human versus human starter box, because in my eyes it was sort of like a reaction against the Game of Thrones game. Obviously, as time has got on, maybe that has changed because they've realized that that game not that popular, so they can essentially just do what they like. And I think for factions that need revitalizing and need new models, Bretonnians and Tomb Kings, well, they would make perfect sense, right? Mantic have just released some Tomb Kings. I'm not saying that they had any insider knowledge, but maybe they did. But yeah, I personally felt like Kislev would make sense because we know we're going to get like armored burrs and that kind of stuff, so if they're going to do that much new stuff, then putting it in the starter set to me would make perfect sense. So I don't know about this one. For me, it's the one with the biggest doubt. Everything else I can sort of believe, right? All make logical sense. This one I just have a bit of a question mark. Not even about the Bretonnians, it's mainly just the Tomb Kings, just because they were so sort of like disenfranchised by the end of the 8th edition. But maybe I'm completely wrong. As ever, these are rumours, guys. Let's not get too hung up on them. A good chance that they're just simply not true. But I thought it was interesting to talk about the release date yet again as we actually enter 2023. Whilst I'm somewhat hoping it's going to come out in 2023, I am sort of resigning myself to 2024. Even though that actually is sort of good for me, but let's not talk about that. And I just want to give a big shout out to Clint Demetrio, who's become my first Patreon. If you want to support the channel, that's going to be the best way to do so. If you don't want to do that, make sure you like and subscribe, but definitely have a most beautiful day. Goodbye.